The morning I found dead fish floating belly up in my lake, I had no idea I was about to take down an entire HOA board and cost them $500,000. My name is Rex Crawford. I spent 30 years busting my ass as a machinist, saving every penny for 15 acres of retirement paradise. A crystal-clear, spring-fed lake perfect for fishing away from the rest of the world. Then one day I woke up to what looked like a crime scene. Dozens of bass and bluegill floating belly up like they'd just given up on life. A sharp, toxic chemical stench hit me like a slap, the kind that makes you gag and stumble backward. An oily rainbow slick spread across water, so clear you used to see the bottom at 10 feet. My trail camera caught everything. An HOA maintenance truck backing up at 3 in the morning, guys in coveralls dumping barrels into the lake, then speeding off. By the time it was over, their board president was in federal prison and the whole community was begging for forgiveness. But that's getting ahead of myself. After 30 years running a lathe at Midwest Manufacturing, my hand was shot, my back was screaming, and my 401k finally had enough zeros to make me smile. I wasn't looking for trouble, just wanted 15 acres where nobody could tell me what to do. I found this perfect slice of heaven 40 minutes outside town. Natural spring-fed lake, dense woods, enough space to build a modest cabin with my own 2 hands. The realtor mentioned it bordered some fancy HOA community called Willowbrook Estates, but their McMansions were 200 yards away. What could go wrong? Everything was perfect for exactly 18 months. I wake up to loons calling across water, so still it looked like black glass. The smell of pine sap mixed with that clean mineral scent of spring water. My cabin wasn't much, 1,200 square feet of honest lumber and sweat equity, but every board was level, every joint was tight, and it was mine. Then I met Constance Fitzgerald. Picture your worst nightmare of suburban royalty. Then add a law degree and enough entitlement to power a small city. 52 years old, real estate attorney's wife. Drives a white BMW that's always spotless like she has servants with detailing brushes. Always dressed in tennis whites or designer athleisure that probably costs more than my truck payment. She showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning, clicking across my gravel driveway in heels that had no business being within a mile of actual dirt. Mr. Crawford, I'm Constance Fitzgerald, HOA board president. Her voice had that practiced tone rich people use when they're explaining why you don't belong. We need to discuss your situation. I wiped sawdust off my hands. I've been building new kitchen cabinets and stepped onto my porch. Ma'am, this isn't HOA property. Technically, no, she said, glancing at her clipboard like it contained state secrets, but your structures are visible from our community. Our residents invested in a certain lifestyle, and frankly, she paused, studying my work clothes with the kind of look you'd give roadkill. This area is meant for people of certain standards. The way she said certain standards while looking me up and down made my jaw clench. 30 years of honest work, and this woman's talking to me like I crawled out of swamp. Lady, everything's built to code. County inspector signed off. I'm sure you did your best with your background. Another pause, another look. Perhaps you'd consider relocating somewhere more suitable. After she left, I figured she'd made her point and would buzz off to terrorize someone else. Wrong again. First came the anonymous complaints. Fire hazard, unsightly structures, health code violations. I'd lose a day each time some county inspector showed up, found nothing wrong, and left shaking his head. Then Constance escalated. HOA landscaping crews started parking equipment right on my property line. Diesel trucks idling at dawn, exhaust fumes mixing with morning mist off the lake. The foreman would smile and wave like we were old friends while turning my sunrise coffee into a diesel breakfast. The real gut punch came when they accidentally sprayed herbicide on my vegetable garden. 20 years growing tomatoes in that spot. Watched them blacken and curl like they'd been torched. The acrid chemical smell lingered for days. The supervisor shrugged. These things happen. Wind that blows in perfect rectangles matching my garden boundaries. Must be that new GPS-guided weather system. That's when I started documenting everything. Trail camera pointed at the lake. Logbook of every HOA vehicle. Photos time-stamped and filed. 30 years in manufacturing teaches you that when things start failing systematically, somebody's sabotaging the system. 3 weeks later, my trail camera caught something that made my blood boil. 2:30 in the morning, clear as day under infrared. HOA maintenance truck backing up to my lake. 2 guys in coveralls hauling industrial barrels to the water's edge, dumping contents that glowed white-hot on camera, then speeding off like they just robbed a bank. By sunrise, 47 fish were floating belly up. Bass, bluegill, even the old catfish I'd been trying to catch for 2 years. The water looked like someone had poured motor oil across the surface, and the smell, Christ, that chemical stench burned your throat from 50 yards away. I collected samples in mason jars, trying not to gag, saved the footage to 3 different drives, printed screenshots, and marched straight to the monthly HOA meeting that Thursday night. The Willowbrook Community Center smelled like fresh carpet and disappointment. The room was packed with residents who looked like they'd stepped out of a country club catalog. Constance sat at the head table in a cream-colored blazer, running the meeting like she was chairing the Supreme Court. "Mr. Crawford," she announced when I stood up during open comments, "you're not a resident. This meeting is for Willowbrook homeowners only." "Well, Constance, since your people poisoned my lake, I figure that makes it my business." I held up my printouts. Got all on camera. The room went dead quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming and someone's nervous throat clearing in the back row. Instead of looking shocked or apologetic, she leaned back with this smug little smile. "That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Crawford. Are you suggesting our maintenance staff would deliberately contaminate your property? Because that sounds like insurance fraud to me." She shuffled through papers like she'd been expecting this. "I have witness statements from 3 residents who saw you dumping containers near the lake last week. Isn't it convenient that you suddenly have a contamination problem right after your property taxes went up?" The room started buzzing with whispers. She produced typed statements claiming I'd been seen dumping chemicals myself. 3 signatures, 3 lies, all neat and tidy on HOA letterhead. This woman had prepared for my accusation by fabricating counter-evidence. "Furthermore," she continued, savoring her moment, "given your hostile behavior and these fraudulent claims, the board votes to ban you from future meetings as a disruptive non-resident." 5 hands shot up immediately. But here's the thing about being a machinist for 30 years. You learn to think 3 moves ahead while everyone else is still figuring out move 1. While she was orchestrating her kangaroo court, I quietly photographed those witness statements with my phone. After the meeting, I lingered in the parking lot until most people left. Constance always parked closest to the building. God forbid she walk an extra 20 feet in those designer heels. While she was inside, probably celebrating, I slipped back into the community center through a side door someone had propped open. The conference room was empty. Her precious file folder was still on the table. Inside, copies of HOA waste disposal contracts, vendor agreements, and invoices showing they'd been illegally dumping cleaning solvents for 6 months to save disposal fees. Apparently saving a few $1,000s was worth risking federal environmental violations. I photographed everything, hands steady despite my racing heart, put the folder back exactly where I found it, and walked out whistling an old Merle Haggard tune. Next morning, I drove to the county environmental lab with water samples and my camera footage on a flash drive. Cost me $400 out of pocket, but the results were worth every penny. Methylene chloride and trichloroethylene in concentrations that could drop a grizzly bear. Then I did something Constance never expected from a simple machinist. I filed a complaint with the EPA online. Free. Took 20 minutes. Attached photos, lab results, footage. Hit submit. Got an automatic confirmation with a case number. 3 days later, my phone rang. "Mr. Crawford, this is Agent Torres with the EPA Criminal Investigation Division. We need to talk." Agent Torres turned out to be a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who'd been investigating environmental crimes longer than I'd been fishing. We met at a diner outside town where the coffee tasted like motor oil and the vinyl booze had seen better decades. She spread my photos across the sticky Formica table. "Mr. Crawford, what you've documented here constitutes multiple felony violations of the Clean Water Act. We're talking $50,000 per day per violation." She tapped one of my infrared photos. This isn't some HOA dispute anymore. This is federal environmental crime. While the EPA started building their case, Constance launched her counterattack. A thick envelope arrived, certified mail from Fitzgerald and Associates. Cease and desist, demanding $50,000 for defamation and interference with business relationships. That same week, she filed for a restraining order, claiming I'd threatened violence at the meeting. Complete fabrication, but I still had to take a day off to appear in court and explain to a skeptical judge why I wasn't a dangerous lunatic. Then things got weirder. I noticed a guy in a wrinkled sedan parked across from my property taking pictures with a telephoto lens. When I walked over, he didn't even try to hide it. "You Rex Crawford?" "Depends who's asking." "Name's Patterson, private investigator." He handed me a cheap business card. "Lady's paying me good money to document your activities. But between you and me, this whole thing stinks worse than week-old fish." He wasn't just following me. Constance had asked him to plant evidence, dump chemical containers near my lake, make it look like I'd been disposing of solvents myself. Offer him an extra $5,000 to doctor photos. He shook his head. 30 years in this business, and I ain't starting to frame people now. My neighbor Dolores, sweet 83-year-old lady who'd been bringing me garden tomatoes since I moved in, shuffled over with news that made my blood pressure spike. Constance had offered her $5,000 cash to sign a paper, saying she'd seen me dumping chemicals at night. Dolores told her to take her dirty money and shove it where the sun don't shine. The pattern was clear. Constance wasn't just fighting dirty. She was committing fresh crimes to cover up the old ones. Witness tampering, attempted evidence planting, perjury in sworn court documents. Each desperate move dug her hole deeper. While she hired lawyers and investigators, I quietly built my federal case. I called Agent Torres with updates on every harassment attempt, creating a documented pattern of obstruction. I filed a second EPA complaint, this one including the waste disposal contracts I photographed. I've been reading up on environmental law. Whistleblowers get special federal protection, and attempting to intimidate them carries serious prison time. Agent Torres called with an update that made my week. "Mr. Crawford, we've discovered your HOA has been falsifying environmental compliance reports for 3 years. We're looking at systemic fraud now. And Mrs. Fitzgerald's obstruction attempts just upgraded this to organized criminal activity." 3 weeks later, I woke to the sound of rushing water where there shouldn't have been any. My basement workshop was flooded with 2 inches of murky water that smelled like wet concrete and ruined dreams. Someone had cut my main water line during the night with surgical precision, clean sliced through PVC pipe that no reasonable person would call accidental. The insurance adjuster confirmed it. Professional tool marks, sabotage. 2 days earlier, my truck tires had been slashed while parked outside the hardware store. For perfectly punctured sidewalls. Security footage showed an HOA maintenance truck lurking in the background, plate conveniently obscured by mud. Constance filed a complaint with the state environmental agency, claiming my septic system was polluting groundwater. The inspector showed up annoyed, looked around my obviously well-maintained property, and sighed. "Anonymous tip. We have to check everyone." It passed with flying colors. Then I learned the HOA was attempting adverse possession of a 10-foot strip of my property that included lake access. Basically legal theft if you can prove long-term open use. Except I'd only been there 18 months, and I had time-stamped photos and footage proving every trespass. Research showed 3 other bordering owners had received identical claims in the past 5 years, all quietly settled. Constance wasn't just targeting me. She was running a systematic land grab. I reached out to Sarah Chun, an investigative journalist at the regional newspaper who specialized in municipal corruption. After I emailed her my documentation, she said if half of it was true, this was front-page material. She started digging into HOA financial records through public requests. Meanwhile, my GoFundMe for legal defense raised $12,000 in 48 hours. Turns out plenty of people have been screwed by HOAs and were eager to support someone fighting back. Sarah hit pay dirt. Constance had embezzled $180,000 from the HOA reserve fund over 3 years, laundered through fake landscaping contracts with her brother's shell company. The chemical dumping started exactly when legitimate disposal costs would have exceeded the stolen funds. She couldn't afford proper hazardous waste disposal because she'd already spent the money on herself. My lake fed into state-protected wetlands downstream. The EPA found methylene chloride in Spring Creek, which feeds the Clearwater Wildlife Preserve, an endangered salamander habitat. What started as a fish kill was now threatening an entire protected species. Agent Torres explained, the environmental contamination wasn't an accident or simple cost-cutting. It was the direct result of systematic embezzlement. She poisoned the ecosystem to hide her theft. Sarah's series launched. Local TV picked it up. Constance's social circle distanced themselves fast. Her tennis partners stopped returning calls. The country club started asking questions about her membership dues. The HOA's insurance company froze coverage pending the investigation. Any settlements would come out of association assets, meaning homeowners were about to discover their dues had funded both embezzlement and environmental crimes. Federal environmental crimes carry heavier penalties than traditional white-collar theft. Constance was looking at potential decades in prison. The war room became my kitchen table, legal documents, environmental reports, coffee cups everywhere. Agent Torres, Sarah Chun, and my new pro bono environmental lawyer Patricia Hendricks became regulars. Federal prosecutors were building RICO charges for organized criminal activity. Sarah expanded her series to expose similar patterns in other HOAs. Patricia prepared a civil suit for property damage, emotional distress, and civil rights violations. Constance's husband Richard showed up at my door one rainy evening with a briefcase. He looked like a man losing sleep and gaining ulcers. He laid $75,000 in cash on my coffee table, bundled bills like a mob movie. This covers your damage, legal expenses, compensates you for the inconvenience. All we ask is you withdraw the EPA complaint and sign a confidentiality agreement. I had my phone recording in my shirt pocket. Felony bribery, documented. That's generous, Richard, but I'm not really interested in salamanders for the money. He looked confused. I told him to Google Clean Water Act penalties. Constance tried a smear campaign next. Hired her niece to spread rumors online about my mental stability and service record. My old Sergeant Billy called laughing. He told her my biggest crime was being too good at fixing broken equipment. The petition she tried to get residents to sign backfired when people learned the truth about the dumping and embezzlement. Agent Torres called. Attempting to bribe a federal witness upgraded the case to full RICO territory. The IRS launched a parallel investigation for tax evasion on the unreported embezzled income. 3 days before the HOA annual meeting, another oily slick appeared on my lake. My upgraded security caught 2 men in unmarked coveralls dumping barrels at 2 in the morning. One looked straight at the camera and waved. At dawn, a bulldozer showed up to maintain an access easement. The operator shut it down when I explained it was private property with no permits. He'd been offered double rates to start before sunrise. Said the lady seemed desperate. FBI wiretaps caught Constance discussing flight to Costa Rica. My passport's current, and I can transfer the offshore accounts from anywhere with internet. The annual meeting was packed. Over 200 residents. Sarah's expose dropped that morning. Federal agents positioned throughout the parking lot. I walked in with my legal team. Constance tried to run the meeting like nothing had changed. When I stood during open comments, she tried to shut me down. I connected my laptop to the screen and played the infrared footage of the dumping. Gasps filled the room. Next slide. Financial audit showing $180,000 embezzled. Then the EPA lab report confirming the chemicals that kill my fish and threaten salamanders. Agent Torres stood up from the audience. Constance Fitzgerald, you're under arrest. She bolted in 3-inch heels, made it maybe 10 feet before marshals guided her to the floor. Handcuffs clicked shut. The room erupted in shocked whispers, then applause. Residents lined up to thank me, sharing years of horror stories. Fines for holiday decorations, lawsuits over garden choices, harassment over maintenance that met every legal requirement, but offended her aesthetic sensibilities. I addressed the crowd as she was led away. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because no one should have to fight corruption alone. Your HOA belongs to you, not whoever's willing to steal from it. Standing ovation from 180 people who'd waited years for someone to stand up to suburban tyranny. 6 months later, Constance was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution. The judge called it one of the most egregious cases of environmental crime motivated by personal greed he'd seen in 20 years. Her husband got 3 years for conspiracy and witness tampering. Embezzled funds were recovered through asset forfeiture, offshore accounts, jewelry, even that spotless white BMW. Every penny went back to the HOA reserve and environmental restoration. My lake came back to life faster than anyone expected. EPA cleanup removed contaminated sediment. Within 4 months, fish were jumping again. Water so clear you can see bottom at 12 feet. I caught a 5-pound bass last week that fought like it had something to prove. The wetlands became the Clearwater Salamander Preserve, funded in part by Constance's restitution payments. Willow Brook transformed. New board eliminated punitive rules, focused on community gardens, neighborhood watch, annual festivals. Property values recovered and climbed. I became the unofficial mediator for neighbor disputes, mostly reminding people reasonable adults can solve problems without lawsuits. The annual Clean Water Festival draws hundreds. Proceeds fund the Rex Crawford Environmental Scholarship Program. 15 students in the first year, all studying environmental law or protection at state universities. I married Ellen, Dolores' daughter, who moved back to care for her mom. She's an environmental engineer who thinks my accidental activism is either heroic or insane, depending on the day. We're building a cabin on the far side of the lake where we can fish in peace and watch salamanders thrive. My phone keeps ringing with calls from people fighting their own HOA corruption, trailer park residents battling toxic dumps, condo owners discovering embezzled funds, homeowners facing harassment from power-hungry boards. Fighting corruption wasn't what I planned for retirement, but sometimes the most important work chooses you. The lake sparkles in the afternoon sun. Base jumping, loons calling across water so clear you can watch salamanders swimming 8 feet down. This is what victory looks like: an ecosystem restored, a community healed, and justice served with a side of environmental protection.